My name is David. Welcome to week 44 of 52 churches in 52 weeks. This is a one-year spiritual challenge as we worship at a different church each week. So if you want to join along, make sure to like and subscribe. I want to say thank you to all those that help support the channel. So today I'm in downtown Grand Rapids, Michigan to attend The Edge. This is a hip-hop church. If you've been following my 52 and 52 journey, you'll know I have a certain curiosity and interests with niche churches. So I've gone to biker churches, trucker churches, cowboy churches, and even a heavy metal rock music church when I did this the first time. And what I saw from that is it brought in a specific subculture that typically may not go to a traditional church, but by preaching their language, they were much more successful towards bringing in new believers. So I was curious, is there like a rap church or a hip-hop church? Well, sure enough, there is. And so today I'm going to be going to The Edge. And I was looking up their website just to kind of figure out why a hip-hop church? What are they trying to do here? From what it sounds like, they term hip-hop as not a fad, not something that can be defined by one song or dance, but it's been around for 40 to 50 years. And whether you like it or not, it's kind of cemented itself, especially in American culture. So what they want to do with this is, with hip hop, it's influenced such a younger generation. How do they flip that around? How can they take the negative influences from a lot of, rap songs and different type of culture and bring that in a positive light and preach the gospel? So they want to take extreme measures to reach a younger generation. So one passage that they use is from Paul, for 1 Corinthians 9:22, where he basically says, to reach the weak, I need to become weak to win the weak. I must become all things to all men so that I may win some. So with The Edge, I'm very curious to see what this looks like. I'm gonna walk in here in just a moment, and I'll be back with a few insights.
Worship His holy name. Sing like never before. Oh, my soul, worship His holy name.
It's The Edge, though. What?
Hey, I ain't got a goddamn trend for the season. 10,000 pieces, I don't believe it. Can't stop listening, let's not breathe it. Stay less, oh, hey, I ain't got a goddamn trend for the season. 10,000 pieces, I don't believe it. Can't stop listening, let's not breathe it. 10,000 HP, that's the law. No, it's infinite, oh, tank, oh, that's the boss. I'm a lord in the room. I ain't never seen nobody do it like this. I'm a 70 to the ruler like this. Look at my world, it's a little like this. Let it breathe, let it breathe. Jesus, that's my creed. I go with it, yeah, he wants it. Don't get down when you're not able. What's been about me?
Bars, beats, and basketball. Those were the three big B's that I took away from this visit that differentiated itself from any other church I've ever been a part of. And before I dribble into the recap of what a hip-hop church was like, I got to mention the pink elephant in the room. I can see traditional Christians look at this and scoff at it. When I do these church visits, I try and remain as open-minded as possible. I don't like to rush to judgment. I want to find the gold at each church that I go to. You know, what's the story here? What are they trying to do? And even for me, there was one part of the hip-hop worship where, and I don't know where this came from, but it just popped in my head, was the word reinforce. And I didn't understand why. And it took me a little while when I started reviewing some of the tapes and the recordings that I filmed in there to understand that there were some hand gestures that happened that for me was like, is this reinforcing the negative influences of hip-hop culture? Like, when you think of hip-hop culture from a Christian standpoint, like, the only name that comes to mind is lecrae from a mainstream aspect. With this visit, like, the thing that kind of changed my tune was just driving through the neighborhood, driving through these projects. Because as I entered into this town, I was surprised at just how compact everything was from a housing perspective. Like, I was driving up this hill, and it's like the front yards with the grass, it's like you can mow that front yard with a scissors and be done in 15 minutes. Everything with the housing just looks so suffocating, so tight, like you could barely breathe from living here. And even right next to the church, like, there was a number of cars that were parked, and it's like even in front of their own home, they could barely find a place to really kind of get in for parking. This is a huge contrast, especially with some of the other churches that I've gone to that may be more critical, that may be more theologically grounded with wordsmith preachers. And I've gone to those type of churches, and it's like the neighbors are country clubs. Like, the 18th hole is just a Tiger Woods tee shot away. That's the closest that any other type of human's going to be towards like a more type of financially well-off castle of the church in the suburbs. With the edge, it's like they're working with something completely different. And what was interesting is with this pastor, he was huge into stats. I've never been to a church where there's so much into stats. So I looked up at their website. 75% of their community lives at or below poverty level. 40% of the kids don't read at a basic reading level. There's 40 different gangs as of 2010. 50% of students, 1 in 2, won't graduate from high school in this city. They have countless number of kids that are showing up to church without any parents. And then 50% of the homes don't have fathers. What they mention is, with the research, it shows that a new church will bring in 6 to 8 times as many new people as an older congregation of the same size. So with this hip-hop church, that's what they're working with. And they're trying to do something a little bit more extreme, something different, to bring in a younger generation. Church started at 12 o'clock p.m. Not in the morning, not in the afternoon, noon. And the only other church I've been a part of that started services that late was a heavy metal rock church. And the reason that I got from that visit was they wanted no excuse for sleeping in on a Sunday morning. They want to make sure that you got to church, and they would bump back time as far back as they could. So when I got there, it was about 10 minutes before the start of service, and the doors were locked. I think what happened is a kid probably was mucking around with the locks, and they didn't have anyone at the front door. So I think someone finally noticed when I was just standing out there. So I got inside, took a seat towards the front, and they had a 5-minute countdown. What was interesting is between the stage and the seating, there was a huge open space. And I've only seen 2 other churches that had that wide open space, and those were used for altar calls. One was at T.D. Jenks' Potter's House in Dallas, Texas, and then another Pentecostal church I visited in Arkansas one time. At the start of service, they had a DJ behind an Apple laptop, and he invited everyone to come towards this area. And that's when the hip-hop artists got out, and this space was essentially used to be kind of like a mosh pit concert type of area. So a lot of people had their phones out, and a lot of times, like, I hate to take my phone out during worship because I don't want to be a distraction. But like there were so many people out with their phone, it was completely socially acceptable for me to do it. So I took a lot of recordings from that. And it was interesting to see how the worship worked, because they would take from popular Christian songs like My God is an Awesome God and 10,000 Reasons, and then they would bounce off the popular stanzas into their own type of remix. So for instance, with 10,000, they would instead say 10K, 10K, or 10 thou. Also during, there was one verse where they mentioned, and I'm no Tupac or Snoop Dogg, but I'm going to try this. Peace, peace, Jesus, that's my creed. Oh, Michael B. Which was a reference to the upcoming Creed 3 boxing movie starring Michael B. Jordan. So they would just kind of sprinkle in all this pop culture into the Christian message. There's also a hip-hop artist did a poetry solo with a beat behind him, and that touched base on a lot of social justice type of causes and kind of softly merged into the need for Jesus Christ as a Lord and Savior. And it finally finished with this music video. And the hip-hop artist talks often about the struggles that he's faced in the hood, and then his love for God and basketball. So there was a lot of visuals on Kobe Bryant's jerseys, Air Jordans, and the rapper also kind of is wearing this Laney High School Michael Jordan jersey. He goes towards his mom, and his mom starts doing her verses, talking about the blessings of having a family. So they merge his hip hop into her church with her kind of gospel choir. And it was a very interesting combination, because you see him and his mom holding hands at one point as they're walking through life, talking about the need for God as their Savior. And it finishes with, may God be, or may His grace be sufficient. And that was very, very touching, and got a huge round of applause when that video finished up. So the kids got dismissed for their own church, and then the lead pastor got up. And man, I like this guy. He was a complete contrast from earlier, because with the hip-hop music, it was very loud. It was very high decibels, just lots of volume. And he, on the other hand, was very down to earth. He was very quiet. He just had a servant's heart about him. And you could tell, like, the congregation really took to this guy. And like, even he introduced himself as the assistant pastor, and he had to get corrected by the congregation to remind him, no, you're the lead pastor. So he started off his sermon, and with his sermon, it was probably one of the most, I've never seen so much crowd or congregation participation before in a sermon. So he started off showing a picture of a Sprite can, and he asked the congregation what the motto is. So if you don't know, it's quench your thirst. And he also asked the congregation, what are other words, what are other phrases that you use when you're thirsty? So he relayed this into a personal story of when he ran cross country. And I guess he had to go up this hill called Hard Times. It was a place that not many runners wanted to go up. And there was no shade, there was no shadows. It's just the sun was beating down on him. And when he finally finished the finish line, like the only thing he could think of was getting some water. He mentions one verse that really came to mind after that was from Proverbs 25:25, where cool water to a weary soul is like good news from a country afar. And he kind of mentioned with Christians, we kind of hold our cool water to ourselves. He was very big into stats, and he mentioned 50% of Christians haven't shared their faith with someone else over the past year. Whereas 78% of unchurched people, they want to have spiritual conversations. So he went into this research done by Elizabeth Holmes. I guess she did some research at Stanford University, I want to say maybe 3 decades ago. And what she did is, with this experiment, is she would have a clapper and a receiver. So 3 people got up, they all took a card, and they saw what kind of song that they would be clapping. Then he had a barcode posted where we could just, with our phones, we could just scan it, and we could get this clapping game on our phones, and we could vote for what they just clapped. So for instance, one of the songs was this. Do you know what it is? Well, what happened with the research is Elizabeth Holmes found that for the clapper, 50% of the time they thought that the listener would guess correctly. But it wasn't anything like that. It was after 125 songs, only 1 in 40 songs were guessed correctly. So if you didn't know, the one that I just clapped, it was Happy Birthday. So there were other songs like Mary Had a Little Lamb and Twinkle Twinkle Little Star as part of this game. And so what that kind of showed was we almost have a curse of knowledge. Like as Christians, we often hear about the resurrection, the forgiveness of sins, just all these other different type of Bible stories. And it's just like we know inside what that is as the clapper, but the receiver, like it's just not on the same wavelength as ourselves. So he really kind of challenged us and kind of showed us other different type of scriptures in terms of, with the gospel, like this can be cool water to other people. They need to listen to this. They need to hear it, but we just need to have the confidence to be able to do it. To put a wrap on this visit, after witnessing the bars, the beats, the lyrics, I couldn't help but get a sense that with hip hop culture, maybe it's more like a street psalms, an outlet, a therapeutic outlet to express the pain that one may have, especially growing up in a more tougher type of environment. But at the same time, like you can't be necessarily so vulnerable. You need to remain very strong, tough and gruff, so to speak. And with the Christian message, like I can see very easily how that can merge into that hip hop culture. I'm still wrestling with this, so I'm not 100% confirmed to that type of feeling, but I could see some different things. I would need to witness more to understand this myself. But with this church, it wasn't just speaking their language, it was rapping their language. And that's where I think the Edge is really helping out with a community that more traditional churches just wouldn't be able to see. Tell you what, that's going to wrap up week 44. Hope you enjoyed this week's visit to the Edge. For next week, I'm not sure where to go just yet, but if you got requests, make sure to leave that in the comments below. But make sure to like and subscribe. Always appreciate that. But until next time, hope you have a good one.